Time for something heavy. We head down to the Beacon Hill studio.
Yeah, you're not kidding, Kim Kerrigan. Cosmo Macero of O'Neill & Associates, a man who yesterday did not check his 401k.
Not looking.
Peter Kadges of the Boston Phoenix, a man yesterday who did not check his 401k. VP of Fox25, a man who did not check his 401k. Are we sensing a theme here, Cosmo?
I should have bought bubble gum with the money.
There you go.
Or a new car.
Anything.
It depreciates slower.
That's not bad. That's better investment advice than we got from the president yesterday, who took to the podium to calm our fears and turned into President Kevin Bacon. The New York Post says, tanks a lot. We know the market's tanked after he took to the podium, Cosmo. What do you make of what he said yesterday?
Yeah, you know, for an administration and a president just months ago had tremendous signs of strength. This is a tremendous sign of weakness. If you speak to calm the markets, and indeed the absolute opposite happens, it looks real bad. It looks real bad. Now, in all fairness, there are certain forces that no individual, president or otherwise, can change, and the momentum of a panic run on Wall Street is certainly one of them. You know what? The president ought to know that.
I'm not even sure if it's a panic run or a sensible run.
Indeed. The president ought to know that, and he ought to think twice about what he says and how he says it at a time like that, because politically, on top of everything else, not a good day for him.
Peter, you're a guy who voted for this president. Like myself, I was stunned at how poor a performance this was yesterday. What was your reaction?
He would have been better off saying nothing. And this is two poor performances in a row as far as I'm concerned. And look, I'm someone who is, I think it's safe to say, generally more sympathetic to the president than you might be, VB. His last two public speeches, we would have been better off if he hadn't made them. You have to say something.
Well, that was my thing, Cosmo, where he said, there's a lot of good ideas out there. I'll have some of my own in a couple of weeks. Why would you put that line in his speech?
Yeah, I got a plan. I'm going to fax it out to you in a couple of days. You know, I mean, he's trying to exercise control over things that an individual cannot control.
Did it remind you of Baghdad Bob at all?
A little bit. I guess a little bit. I think that when you're in that situation and you're trying to somehow exercise control and you really can't, it's better to just to sort of step back and say, okay, you know, I can't come out and make these kind of statements in this situation. And that's the mistake he made.
All right, let's move on to the catalyst for the week that's been. That would be Standard & Poor's, S&P. The question is, with them dropping the credit rating to AA+, was this stupid, Cosmo? Was this prescient? Was it somewhere in between?
I think the criticism is that there's too much of politics in that decision. But you know what? It comes down to the more risk, the lower the credit rating. And in this case, the political dynamics of the operations of the nation are part of analyzing the risk. So it makes sense that the political dynamics of our debt situation is part of their calculation. And I think we'll see, and we have seen, the other rating agencies, specifically Moody's, saying, you know what, they're on watch, and we may indeed take action in the future. So, yeah, there's been a lot of criticism, but hey, if you look at the national debt, and really this illustration of our inability to deal with it, how can you argue with the sense in making that move?
A, your opinion of Standard & Poor's decision, Peter. B, your rating of the president's decision to attack Standard & Poor's rather than to take his lumps.
Short-term, Standard & Poor's is wrong. Long-term, Standard & Poor's is right. To me, taking issue the way he did with Standard & Poor's is not a helpful thing to do. Let your underlings do that. I think the Secretary of the Treasury, interestingly enough, was on the money. I hate the expression, it is what it is, but it is. It's a new reality, and you have to deal with it. Look, there's one way out of this, one way only, and that is to create jobs. I don't mean little piddling jobs, and I don't mean jobs that retain that retain people who are already working, although that's a valuable thing to do. There's a great irony here. Because the cost of borrowing is so low, we would be better off economically to create a real jobs program, because it'll cost less to put people to work than it will to pay them unemployment. And we have to figure out a way to do that.
I think 2 words, VB, describe sort of the panic that has set in this sort of milestone in history, and they are first ever. This is a first ever event, and when that happens, uncertainty and concern sort of feeds upon itself, and that's what we're seeing in the markets. That's what we're seeing where people are fleeing into treasuries, even though we've been told that treasuries are now are less worthy of an investment, yet people are fleeing to the safe haven. Doesn't make any sense, right? But that's what happened yesterday. Because this has never happened before, and I think that's what's feeding the
What
panic.
sense does it make when Clinton was in office and we had an allegedly balanced budget? We had a AAA rating. Now we have $14 trillion in debt, and we're supposed to have the same rating? It makes no sense. That being said, I got a minute left, Peter. Dow closed down, obviously, 635 points yesterday. How soon before the Dow goes under 10,000, and how bad is that for the president?
Well, let me take the second part first. It's bad for the president, and it's not good for the rest of us. Hey, it could be today. It's not that far the drop. I don't like making predictions like that. But there is absolutely no reason to be hopeful about almost anything economically.
Cosmo, quickly.
I simply can't predict that. I thought there'd be bargain hunting last week. I would imagine for sure there'd be some bargain hunting now for a little bit of a rally. But you're right. Peter's right. It could go down today. Who knows? It's tough to predict. It is indeed bad for the president. This is a very, very bad couple of days.
When you get the president's ideas faxed to you, can you send them over to me, Cosmo?
Looking forward to that.
I'm still waiting for his debt ceiling ideas.
Maybe a
I'd like to hear what ideas the Tea Party has about all this.
That'll be next as well. Peter Kadges of the Boston Phoenix, Cosmo Macero of O'Neill Associates. They're the heavy hitters.